What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? Today we're going to be going through a video where this Christian lays out his argument against atheism. He's got 5 different points as to how atheism fails to be a good explanation for anything. For one thing, atheism doesn't attempt to explain anything other than what a person doesn't believe. To suggest that there needs to be evidence for atheism, the only real evidence that you can provide is whether or not you actually don't believe in a God. So we're going to take a look at this Christian's evidence against atheism and why we should be Christian. If you're interested in this kind of bullshit, then please stay tuned.
Hey guys, this is Daniel. I just wanted to make this video real quick to kind of discuss what we're going to be going through in this next video with the topic of atheism. Now, I know atheism is more of a sensitive topic, and I want you to know that. I've met many people who are atheists. In fact, many of my friends are atheists, and I've had discussions with them, and that's where a lot of my material came for this next video. So I want you to understand that when we discuss who atheists are or why some people may choose to be atheists, it's not out of a hateful or spiteful kind of attitude when I explain this. This is more of, if atheism, this particular worldview, is true, then these are the implications of atheism and how it could affect the environment, how could it affect the world, how could it affect absolutely everything. So I just want to say that right before we go into this video. So I hope you enjoy. Thank you.
All right. Hi, Daniel. How you doing? First off, I want to point out how he says that the information or the arguments that he is going to be going through are the result of him talking to atheists about why they're atheists or why they don't believe in God. So keep that in mind while you're watching this video. I also want to touch on the fact that atheism is not a worldview. Atheism is just simply not believing in a God. For whatever reason, probably most atheists out there don't believe in a God because there's not enough evidence to suggest that a God exists. So therefore, they're unconvinced that a God exists. I know at least that's my position, so I can really only speak for why I'm not a theist or why I am an atheist. But he said that he's going to tell us how this worldview affects the environment, affects the world, just affects everything. So keep all these things in mind while we go through his video. Spoiler alert, I don't think that he actually understood anything that the atheists were telling him.
Hey guys, I'm Daniel Hill, and today we're going to be going further into why we believe in Christianity over every other worldview. So, with that, we're going to discuss atheism. Atheism is the disbelief or the lack of belief in the existence of God or gods. There are different forms of atheism. Some are naturalists, meaning that everything came into being through natural causes. Some are atheists, so that they can live however they want. A good example of this is from Frank Turek, who often goes to many college campuses, and he'll ask students, if you knew that Jesus was real and that he was the Lord of your life, would you choose to follow him? And quite often, he said that they will say no.
Well, yes, that's because the majority of atheists have read the Bible, and they know that the God of the Bible, including Jesus, are just really big dicks. So no, I would not follow and submit myself to Jesus if he were real, or God, Yahweh, the Abrahamic God. If that jackass were real, no, I definitely would not bow down and follow him. But as far as atheism goes, the only pertinent thing is whether or not I recognize his existence. If anybody were to be able to sufficiently prove that this Yahweh God actually existed, then I would acknowledge that he existed.
I'd definitely flip him a bird, call him a dick.
But I would at least acknowledge that he existed. This does not mean that I just want to live my life the way that I want to live it, or as most Christians see it, I just want to sin, therefore I'm an atheist. Because I wouldn't be an atheist at the point of me flipping God the bird and telling him to fuck off. I would definitely acknowledge his existence. So I would no longer be an atheist at that point. I would be a theist. I just wouldn't submit myself to God. Of course, all of this is assuming that your particular definition of God is the true definition. We could go into like the different definitions that exist between the denominations, because each denomination would have their own definition of God, essentially. So which one is correct? Is the Baptist version of God correct? Is the New Independent Fundamental Baptist version of God correct? Is the Presbyterian God correct? Technically, they're all the same God, but they all have different definitions, at least different enough to where you have to create a new denomination. The way I see it, you still have a long road ahead of you to even get to the point where I'm acknowledging whether or not God exists.
So, let's look at those 4 questions that we discussed earlier. Origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. And let's apply those to atheism. So, origin. If naturalism or atheism was true, then we are simply here by chance. Darwinianism or macroevolution. And life originated from a single cell organism that eventually evolved over billions of years and created the world that we know today.
Okay, so I remember him bringing up the whole naturalist, atheists, and all this other stuff. From what I can tell, most people are naturalists until it comes to a point where they feel like God is needed to explain something. Every single thing that has happened in the past has eventually been explained through a natural process. So it's not irrational or illogical to assume that nature causes things to happen. We have yet to prove that a supernatural entity is required in order for anything in this reality to happen. Even in the cases where something miraculously happens, like someone miraculously heals or something like that, we do not have any supporting evidence to suggest that a supernatural God suspended the natural order of reality in order for that thing to happen. All of these miraculous events in the past have eventually been explained through natural means. And then he went on to shit talk evolution, which has literally nothing to do with atheism or whether or not a God exists. There are theistic evolutionists out there. So I don't understand why you're bringing up evolution other than the fact that you're listening to fucking Frank Turek, who often conflates evolution with the existence of God. It just seems like you're listening to all of the most generic and horrible apologists out there that have the worst arguments to believe in God.
Now, scientific evidence overwhelmingly confirms that the universe exploded into being out of nothing.
No, that's not what science says. Science would say that the universe inflated in a very short time that seems near instantaneously, and not out of nothing, at least not the nothing that you're thinking about. The nothing that you're referencing still has an electrical charge, so is still something. But the nothing that you're thinking about is absolutely nothing, which doesn't exist in reality. Space, absent of just every single thing, not even an electrical charge, is only hypothetical and cannot be actualized in reality. The nothing that actually exists still has something in it. So it's not from nothing as you would think of it, it's still from something. But it's still a better explanation than God spouting some magical incantation to create the entire universe out of literally nothing.
And at one point in the universe. But, according to the atheist, that explosion came from nothing and by chance created everything in perfect order.
Perfect order? I kind of feel like this is what he thinks atheists say the Big Bang was.
Smoke weed every day. Smoke weed every day.
That is not what happened. Like, you saying that atheists claim that the universe exploded into perfect order makes me think of that clip. And if that's what you're thinking, that's not at all what atheists claim, nor scientists. For one thing, the beginning of the universe has literally nothing to do with atheism or not being convinced by God. I feel like apologists have turned it into an argument for God, and us using science to refute your logical leap to God existing is not exactly connected to atheism necessarily. It's just using the information that we have on hand to refute your bad arguments. So no, you're completely wrong about what atheists say about the Big Bang.
Even Fred Hoyle, who's an atheist and a British mathematician and astronomer, discusses the chances of this happening when saying that the Big Bang happening and evolution occurring in perfect order And the world we know is the same chances of a tornado going through Kansas and creating a Boeing 747.
You know, I'm really tired of this whole tornado through a junkyard creating an airplane thing. It's really tired and it's really old, and it's kind of just a wow moment that this is still being used. Yes, it is highly improbable that events would have played out the way that they played out. But just because you can provide big numbers or low probabilities does not mean that it can't happen, because those low probabilities are not zero. Unless you tell me that the probability of all of this happening is zero, a big old goose egg, then there's still a chance. And given pigeonhole theory, which says given a big enough data set, you will 100% have something happening at least once. And if it can happen once, then it can definitely happen a second time. Just take, for instance, the Earth forming the way that it did so that it can support life. Currently, there are about 40 billion planets that could support life in our galaxy alone. Is there a low probability that a planet would support life? Yes, but that low probability, given a big enough data set, will produce a lot of different instances of it happening. Also, he's kind of shitting on the entire idea that all of this just happened by chance. I don't see a negative thing about it just happening by chance. Like, just by chance, everything played out to where we're here today. Yeah. I don't see how that diminishes our lives. I don't see how that diminishes, the fact that we're here. I don't see how this is an argument against anything other than an appeal to emotion, because you want to feel important to somebody or something. It just seems like saying that, oh, we're just here by chance. There's no purpose behind us being here. Okay. Yeah, there's no purpose. So what?
Or even the simplest life form contains information equivalent to 1,000 encyclopedias. Atheists believe this is a non-natural force created this. If atheism is true, then we simply originated by chance.
Okay, so here's the thing. Earlier he was talking about the tornado through the junkyard creating the airplane, and now he's talking about evolution and how DNA can hold so much information and all this other stuff. He paints this as being totally irrational to believe that it came about naturally. But the thing is that when comparing the junkyard to evolution and the DNA and its information to probability that it would be created naturally, what he doesn't understand is that we have natural processes that lead us to those conclusions. Like comparing evolution to a tornado through a junkyard creating an airplane. We don't have any natural processes that would explain an airplane coming together, like it would be required to come together in the instance of a tornado through a junkyard. We don't have any natural processes that would explain that, but we do have natural processes for evolution. We do have natural processes for how DNA can store as much information as it does. We have natural explanations for these things, and therefore do not need a supernatural deity to do it for us. The supernatural deity explanation is not an explanation at all. It's like a placeholder, just waiting to be discovered. The only thing is that we've already discovered these processes. We know these processes. It's just that Christians, like this guy right here, as well as Frank Turek and anybody else that spouts off the same talking points as Frank Turek, they don't want to admit that we have the information that guides us to these natural conclusions.
Our world and universe work in perfect sync, and our bodies are wonderfully designed in perfect order.
Perfectly in sync? Are you fucking serious? Our bodies are perfectly designed? Are you fucking shitting me right now? There are kids being born right now that have bone cancer. There are kids with genetic diseases that are so horrible that I don't even want to fathom them, right? We got kids that are homeless, that live in poverty. We got a political party out there that thinks that Jews destroyed California with a Jew laser from space. That's an example of how irrational rational like our brains can be and are therefore not perfect in any kind of sense. It amazes me how these Christians think that our bodies are perfectly designed when our bodies fail all the time. We have vestigial parts all in us, not just in us, but in other animals too, like whales with their non-functioning leg bones and shit. Those kinds of things. How is any of this perfectly designed? As an engineer myself, that's a pretty shitty fucking design. I'm not gonna design a modern car with both modern headlights and archaic candle-lit lamps on the front end of the car. Like, that's just ridiculous. But that's essentially what God has done for some organisms on this planet. Also, if this planet was perfectly created, why do we have such devastating natural disasters? It kinda seems like God created a doom planet that's gonna kill us all.
Did this happen by chance, or was it by an ultimate designer?
Oh no, all of this shit definitely screams chance. Like, the natural processes that go into shaping organisms on this planet definitely suggest that there was no guiding hand to it. It definitely all just sort of happened by chance.
Think of a watch. If you see a watch lying on the ground, do you believe it originated by chance, or did someone create that watch and drop it on the ground? The same can be said about our universe, DNA, and so on and so forth.
You serious?
Oh God, you quite literally use the watchmaker argument. This is such a bad argument. There's obviously no natural process that goes into creating a watch without some kind of guiding hand as, humans. Comparing that to the universe or to the earth or to evolution or anything like that is just fucking ridiculous. We have natural processes to explain how the universe formed, how galaxies form, how suns form, how planets form. We have natural processes to explain all of those things. Yet we have no natural process to tell us why a Timex appeared on a beach. So it's just so ridiculous for you to even attempt to compare a watch to anything else that was naturally produced.
Everything works in perfect order, and it points to a perfect creator.
Everything works in a perfect order? Really? I don't see everything working in a perfect order. I see natural forces interacting with each other that end up producing other natural effects, but that's hardly perfect. And no, none of this points to a perfect God, even if those things were perfect. This is called a logical leap to God, and it's something that I'm just really fucking tired of.
Next is meaning. If atheism is true, then there really is no God, there are no morals, no right or wrong, and there's no purpose to life.
Are you fucking serious right now? No. If there's no God that exists, and that's the absolute truth of reality, it has nothing to do with any of those fucking things. We still have morality. We are the ones that create morality. We have our own moral foundations. Those moral foundations are shaped by the society that we live in, the time and place that we live in within that society. All of that shapes our own moral foundations, and we each have our own moral foundation. And then life has no meaning to it? Are you fucking serious with that too? We obviously have meaning regardless of whether or not God exists. It's just that Christians surround their meaning to life with God. That is their primary meaning to life, and that's to worship God. We don't have that. We have to create our own meanings. We have to go out and figure shit out for ourselves instead of just reading it in a book. I remember when I was a Christian, I would think that I had a meaning to my life and I would attribute it to God, when really that was just something I wanted to do in my life, or that was some meaning that I wanted my life to have. It's just atheists just don't go that extra step to attribute it to a God. Like, oh, God wants me to become an engineer or to become a teacher. No, God doesn't want to do that. You do.
We are simply here by chance. So if there is no life after death, then it does not matter if we live good lives or bad lives, as it's all meaningless.
No. It's not all meaningless. We're definitely held accountable to the society that we live in, to people around us. Although you are kind of describing a psychopath or a sociopath, I would say that they don't care about the effect they have on other people, and they might have that particular position. But regardless of those types of people, for the most part, people hold themselves accountable to the people around them, and others hold them accountable. So it's not that none of this matters. The effect that I have on other people definitely matters. I just don't attribute all of this meaning to a God. That's it.
You can choose to be a good person, but then again, it's pointless.
No, it's definitely not pointless to be a good person. Also, I'm a firm believer in the fact that you can't just choose to be an evil person. I feel like something has to happen to you that turns you into an evil person if you were a good person. But also, grandma that lives across the street can't just up and decide one day to be an evil bitch and, go and kill her neighbors or something like that without something happening to her that would, I guess, cause her to do that. What you're talking about is just having the free will to just wake up one day and be like, oh,
I'm gonna commit genocide today. Yeah, genocide sounds good.
that doesn't happen. I think that you're taking the whole free will thing a bit too literally.
In atheism, there is no ultimate purpose to life. It would be meaningless.
All right, so there's two things here. One is ultimate purpose and the other's meaning. One is not tied to the other. For Christians, their ultimate purpose is to worship God. But for atheists, there is no ultimate purpose, and that's okay. They think that it's not okay not to have an ultimate purpose. I kind of feel like this is underneath all of this is Christians and other religious people want everybody to have the same purpose. It's essentially them coming up to you and being like, hey you, I don't like how you think. You should change your thoughts. You should have my thoughts. I get that feeling whenever a Christian talks about how, everybody has ultimate purpose, because I know that their ultimate purpose is worshiping that God did. But then there's the meaning. Meaning is not tied to an ultimate purpose whatsoever. Those are two different things.
Next, if atheism is true and there is no God, no morals, no right or wrong, then there is no purpose to life. We are simply here by chance.
I'm sorry. Are we to the point where we're just repeating ourselves now? I feel like you've said this one or two times already.
So, if there is no life after death, then it doesn't matter if we live good lives or bad lives, as it's all meaningless.
Let's turn this around a little bit. If Jesus is the way to heaven, and what you have to do is believe in God and Jesus and worship them in order to get into heaven and ask for forgiveness for your sins, then why does it matter whether or not you're a good person? Now, caveat here is that, like Catholics, they believe you have to have both good works and believe in Jesus to get into heaven. You could definitely believe in Jesus and you didn't do any good works and you end up going to purgatory or hell. Which I don't know, does purgatory even exist anymore? But there are definitely Christian teachings out there that have it as just believing in Jesus and God and asking for forgiveness of sins gets you into heaven. So at that point, for that particular type of theology in Christianity, it doesn't matter whether or not you're a good person or a bad person. I guess I really don't see this accountability that Christians generally attribute to their faith concerning Protestant denominations. I find there's no justice in it whatsoever. Now, I'm not sure what type of Christian you are there, Daniel, but it seems to me that maybe your particular type of Christianity probably doesn't provide any kind of like checks and balances for people being good and bad. I don't see a whole hell of a lot of difference. You just add an extra step in there and saying you gotta suck Jesus' dick in order to be forgiven for your sins.
You can choose to be a good person, but again, it's pointless. If atheism, there is no ultimate purpose to life. Next is morality. If atheism is true, then that would also mean that there is no morality. There's no right or wrong.
No, there's still right and wrong. Those are inherently subjective terms that you're using there. I think what you mean is absolute rights and wrongs. And generally, that's what Christians are talking about whenever they are discussing morality, is absolute morality. I would definitely say that we have subjective or relative morality, and relative in the sense of, it's specific to the time and place that we live in, and we can use our own moral foundations to judge other people's moral actions as right or wrong. That's still all inherently subjective. So no, under atheism, it wouldn't be that morality doesn't exist. It would be that absolute morality doesn't exist. And I really don't think that does exist.
That means that if I was to wrong you, whether it was murder or steal, then I really shouldn't be prosecuted.
Oh, I'm sorry. That took me a second to process, but you realize that those are laws of the land, right? Like, sure, we can make these moral decisions about stealing and all that, but I feel like everything that you listed is subject to nuances of the context. If there's some kind of shortage of food and a guy steals food in order to feed his family, is that morally wrong? No, I would say that that's morally good or neutral. A lot of the things that Christians point out as morally wrong or bad are really just morally neutral or good. So it's not that we shouldn't prosecute people, because we should definitely prosecute people who break the law, but it's about making these moral decisions, and it's all very dependent upon context and your own moral foundation.
As there is no moral law. But we know that through history and every culture, there has been some form of moral law. Scripture discusses this in Romans 2:14 through 15, and it says this: even Gentiles who do not have God's law, written law, show that they know it when they instinctively obey it, even without having heard it. They demonstrate that God's law is written in their hearts, for their own conscience and thoughts either accuse them or tell them that they are doing right.
Well, so what that passage right there is literally pointing out is that societies have general moral foundations. Whenever this group, the Israelites or the Christians, see another group that also thinks that it's wrong to kill a motherfucker in the streets, the Christians are like, oh, so you're stealing from our God in order to have a moral foundation. Or at least that's what modern Christians do. And so it just becomes this baseless claim of, oh, well, they have the God's laws written on their hearts too, when really it's just a common moral foundation. Given that a group of people living in a society, even as big as the United States is now, we have some semblance of a shared moral foundation. Ultimately, we all have our own subjective moral foundations, but we do have this general sense of how to survive in a society. And that includes this shared moral foundation. And that's why these large societies have been successful in the past. Because there's some basic moral foundation that allows for people to live together. But the main point is that is definitely not tied to a God.
With atheism, there is no answer to morality, and the true atheist should have no moral compass.
A true atheist. Now you're trying to gatekeep atheism? What the fuck, man? No. A true atheist is not going to just be absent of morality or have no morality whatsoever. That's just fucking ridiculous to even suggest.
Last is destiny. There is no destiny. In atheism, if we die, as a friend of mine unfortunately put it, the credits simply roll and that's it. We cease to exist.
I'm fine with that. I get that, because I have no evidence whatsoever to suggest that there is an afterlife. So I don't know why I should believe in an afterlife if there's no evidence of an afterlife. Adding an afterlife tacked on to the end of that kind of diminishes the life that we have now, don't you think? Because this afterlife is infinite, right? It's never ending. And the more that you think about it, the smaller and smaller our time on this earth seems to be. So it really does seem quite pointless, this life on this earth, when we have this eternity afterwards that's supposed to be, awesome as fuck.
So, if Christians, we are wrong about Christianity, we simply die and cease to exist. But
No. Let me stop you right here before you go to the but part, because it's not just that simple. If Christians are wrong, it's not just, oh, you die and cease to exist. This is kind of a Pascal's wager. He's not directly talking about Pascal's wager, but this is a Pascal's wager, because What if you're wrong? What if Christianity's wrong, but Islam is right? You're still going to hell. What if another religion is correct? Let's say that they have a hell-based religion. You're going to their hell. And then what about other denominations of Christianity? If you're a Presbyterian, but it's really the Catholic God, then are you going to hell? You could be. Presbyterian and Baptist? Could you be going to hell? Maybe. You don't know. All right, continue with the but.
If Christianity is true, then every person who did not choose Christ will live an eternity separated from Jesus.
Well, yes. If the Christian God is the true God and the Christian heaven is the one that exists, then yes, we will spend eternity being separated from Jesus. Honestly, I don't want to spend eternity sucking that dick.
Atheism only really answers the first question, but with shaky evidence to back up its claim.
With shaky evidence? I haven't provided any evidence that there's no God. I've simply said that I don't believe a God exists. Nobody has given evidence. Like, I can provide evidence why your God's not real and doesn't exist because I'm very Gnostic on that particular definition. But, I mean, as far as God existing in general, we don't have anything to really... we don't have any evidence that suggests that there is no God. There are some harder atheists out there that feel like they can prove that a God doesn't exist in any kind of capacity, but I'm not a hard atheist. I'm a soft atheist or an agnostic atheist.
Can this worldview really be trusted? In the next video, we'll discuss pantheism and see where the evidence leads. If you want any more information on atheism and the evidence against it, check out the link below.
Well, I do want to thank Daniel today for providing all these really horrible arguments against atheism, because it's the same kind of stuff that we've always heard from all of these apologists. I'm not going to be checking out your link, but I do appreciate you providing some kind of information. I don't know. But in any case, I think that you're just woefully misinformed on what atheists claim and what atheists say about certain things. I mean, I don't know who you've been talking to, but it kind of feels to me like you didn't really listen to what they were saying, and it kind of just went over your head a little bit, because no atheist is going to bring up evolution as proof that God doesn't exist, or the Big Bang that is proof that God doesn't exist, or any of the things that you talked about. And you're just so woefully misinformed on purpose and meaning and morality. It was like a gish gallop of just bad arguments that have been purported by all of the popular apologists. So I would really love to hear what all of y'all think down in the comments. Let me know what you think about his arguments against atheism. And hey, while you're down there, why don't you smash that like button and subscribe if you like this kind of content. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens.